Picture this. You're one of the few people who, for whatever reason, couldn't watch Demon Slayer Infinity Castle Part 1 in theaters, and so you just decided to wait for it to drop on Crunchyroll. And now here we are over 10 months later, and still nothing. So for anyone who doesn't know, Demon Slayer Infinity Castle Part 1 came out in theaters on September 12th, 2025. And now flash forward to right now, 10 months later, and unless you watched it during its run in theaters, there's absolutely no way to watch it to this day, as it is not on any streaming platform whatsoever. Now what makes the situation so crazy is that normally most movies have a theatrical run, followed by a period of time where you're unable to watch the film as it's transferring to streaming and digital. And that period of time varies depending on the film. But typically things like films made in the US normally take anywhere from 1 to 3 months to go to streaming. I mean, some movies that came out in May are already set up for you to watch in your living room right now. But then we have movies like Demon Slayer that came out almost a year ago and there is still nowhere to watch it. But weirdly enough, this actually isn't that uncommon when it comes to anime movies and streaming platforms in general. Because the average period of time for an anime movie to go from theaters to streaming normally takes anywhere from 6 to 18 months, with blockbuster movies like Demon Slayer, for example, normally taking the latter. Also, all the release dates that I'm about to talk about are just from North American theaters, because though Japan gets an earlier release date, streaming services like Crunchyroll aren't able to be used in Japan, so those dates are irrelevant. So to put it into perspective, Chainsaw Man Re:Zark came out in theaters a little over a month after Infinity Castle Part 1, and it still managed to stream onto Crunchyroll a few months ago in April. Even a movie from the same franchise didn't take as long, with Demon Slayer Mugen. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how to pronounce that. Anyways, with Demon Slayer Mugen Train coming out in theaters in April 2021 to then stream on Crunchyroll about 5 months later in early October. Then on the other hand, you have movies like Studio Ghibli's The Boy and the Heron that came out in December 2023 and didn't stream until 9 months later in September 2024. So like I said, it's not necessarily uncommon for these movies to take longer to get to streaming. But then why were so many people talking about Infinity Castle Part 1 as if it's this wild thing for it to be taking so long? Well, that's most likely because Demon Slayer Infinity Castle Part 1 is officially the highest grossing anime film of all time. So that means that there's a lot more hype and presence surrounding this film over others. And so that also means that there's plenty of people who, like me, never knew that the process of anime films going from theaters to streaming would take longer than what people who especially live in the US are used to. So most people, myself included, are kind of learning this for the very first time with Demon Slayer, which is why there seems to be more shock and surprise around this. That and the fact that there was never any clear updates as to when this would really go to streaming, as well as if there would ever be delays. Instead, we were pretty much just left to speculate on our own. But still, there are plenty of anime films that don't take as long to go to streaming. So why do these delays happen? Well, immediately, most people would think that the reason is because there was some sort of distribution issue between Sony or Aniplex and Crunchyroll, which then ultimately created this delay. And yeah, no. From what I've seen, that isn't an issue at all. And in the end, there's really only 2 reasons why this has been delayed so long. And one is the reason why this movie's the highest grossing anime film. And that's because it ended up staying in theaters for an extended time, which started off with around a 3-month run from September to December, and then had another run for around 3 to 4 weeks earlier in March. Which, comparing that to Chainsaw Man, that movie only had a run of 3 to 4 weeks from October to November. This is a strategy that studios normally use when they have an anime film that has a lot of hype around it, in order to capitalize and gain as much money from it as possible. And 2, this was probably a plan to just smoothly stretch out the hype as much as possible going into the next film, since there's ultimately a huge gap between all 3. So yeah, I now understand why it's taken so long. But even though I understand that, and I mean, look, at the end of the day, the longer it stayed in theaters just means that the studio and the animators got paid that much more. I mean, for animators to take this and turn it into this? yeah, they definitely should be getting paid a hell of a lot. So I'm definitely not complaining. That, and I also was one of the people who did see it in theaters. But I still wish that they just would have been a bit more transparent earlier on. Because even though now I understand that, you know, the process of anime films, at least for some, will take longer, I think a lot of people did not know that going into this movie. And sure, plenty of people saw it, so it's technically their fault if they didn't see it anyways. But I still think it would have been better to at least give people a heads up that it was gonna take longer to actually go onto streaming, rather than just giving us the official announcement out of nowhere about a month ago, aka 9 months later. But yeah, we can end this video with good news, because it was announced sometime last month that Infinity Castle Part 1 will finally be streaming on Crunchyroll on July 28th, which will be in a few days after this video was uploaded. So everyone watching this can rejoice knowing that you'll finally be able to either watch this for the first time, or rewatch it to find all the little things you missed when you watched it in theaters. And before I end the video, though I don't feel like I need to say this, I'll just give some advice and say that when Demon Slayer Infinity Castle Part 2 comes out in 2027, yeah, you should probably just watch it in theaters, because something tells me that it's going to take a while till you can watch it again. Alright, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.